Di Wu's figure was caught by the cultivators of the Solar Divine Palace. His divine wheel was severely damaged. A beam of sword will penetrated straight through his body, causing Di Wu's entire aura to be extremely weak. This sword nearly killed him. Di Wu's figure was caught by the cultivators of the Solar Divine Palace. His divine wheel was severely damaged. A beam of sword will penetrated straight through his body, causing Di Wu's entire aura to be extremely weak. This sword nearly killed him. Di Wu was also in agony internally. His divine will had undergone a metamorphosis, and his path had grown more powerful. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture's Sun God Mountain had told him that he had a chance to refine his bloodline until he could unleash his maximum potential. He might even have a chance to cultivate the divine body of the sun. The improvement of his ability made him extremely self-confident and made him want to battle it out with Yi Futian. However, the battle had ended so pathetically. With his divine wheel of the Great Path being suppressed, Di Wu could not block the sword. This was a huge blow to Di Wu. Back in the God's Relic, Di Wu was one of the most monstrous figures in the 9 realms. He had forged a flawless divine wheel in the God's Relic. At that time, Yi Futian was the same level as he was. Back then, as the god of Solar Divine Palace, Di Wu did not even consider Yi Futian to be a threat. However, afterward, Yi Futian became more and more famous. Hence, today, Di Wu found it very difficult to accept this humiliating defeat. Sun God Mountain also placed their wager on him. Since they had announced it in public, they could not go back on their word. Although the cultivators of Sun God Mountain had come over to pillage and take advantage of other people's misfortune, they were still people of status and had to admit their defeat. The cultivators of Sun God Mountain glanced at Di Wu and then looked towards Yi Futian. He was truly extraordinary. They had already tested Di Wu's ability. However, they had not imagined that he would still lose to Yi Futian. It looked like Solar Divine Palace was fated to not be able to obtain the divine item in the ancestral lands of the Divine Palace. After this, they could only be observers and witness what happened after. "You may see yourselves out," the Palace Lord said while sweeping a glance at the cultivators of Sun God Mountain. The leading cultivator smiled and said, "Since we have been defeated, Solar Divine Palace will not participate in today's battle. We will take our leave now." After he spoke, he turned around and left, keeping his promise. The cultivators of Solar Divine Palace also left one after another, but they bore grudges in their hearts. However, they didn't leave entirely. Instead, they lingered at the Sea of the Path, which was quite a distance away from the Divine Palace. They stood at the Sea of the Path and unleashed their wills in the direction of the Divine Palace. They could still observe the battle in such a manner. They wanted to witness for themselves how this storm would end. Could Shangxiao Divine Palace escape their plight? If Shangxiao Divine Palace were defeated, the Divine Martial Road in their ancestral lands would be plundered clean. When that happened, cultivators of Sun God Mountain would no longer be bound to an agreement. There was still hope of getting some spoils. After the cultivators of Sun God Mountain left, the atmosphere of the Divine Palace still remained tense. "I have a condition. Would you be willing to hear me out?" Shen Gao, a cultivator from the Shen clan, spoke at this moment. Everyone's gazes immediately turned towards him. Yi Futian similarly looked toward Shen Gao. Shen Gao's figure walked out from the Sea of the Path, and he ascended into the air. Across the distance, his gaze was directed at Yi Futian as he said, "Yi Futian has previously attacked my Shen clan. Now, he has stirred up trouble in the higher heavens realm. As long as the Divine Palace hands him over to me, I will not be involved in matters here. I will bring him back to be dealt with. How about it?" The Divine Palace wanted Yi Futian. Their conflict was also due to Yi Futian. Shen Gao was actually also thinking that if they could capture Yi Futian, they could still have an opportunity to bring him to their side. Even if he had to make enemies of both parties, Shen Gao still looked highly on Yi Futian. If Shen Gao truly had to kill Yi Futian, he would feel that it was a waste. "It looks like Shen clan has not learned your lesson from the besiegement of the Heavenly Mandate Academy last time," Lord Taishan warned loudly, as he stared at Shen Gao from a distance. "If that's the case, Shen clan better pray that you can capture all of us in one go. Otherwise, We might not let Shin Clan off the hook so easily this time. It was clearly impossible for the Divine Palace to hand Yi Futian over to the Shin Clan. Currently, among the forces of 9 realms, everyone knew Yi Futian was the strongest. Shin Gao was also well aware of it. Hence, he only smiled when he heard Lord Taishuan's reply. He didn't take Lord Taishuan's response to heart. Clearly, he had predicted it. Times have changed, Shin Gao said with a smile. Now, the passageway that connected the Divine Prefecture and the Void Realm had been opened. Not only had Shin Gao returned, but the Shin Clan in the Void Realm could also get in contact with the Shin Clan of the Divine Prefecture. Besieging the Shin Clan? Even though the Heavenly Mandate Academy had an alliance of forces, they would have to think twice in order to take it down. Have you all made your choice? The palace lord's gaze swept across to Guide Song, who was standing next to the throne. Under such circumstances, how did he plan to fight? If they began to fight, could he bear the cost? Since we are rebuilding from scratch, why do we need to hesitate so much? At that moment, a voice called out from the sky. Once the voice cried out, a terrifying wave of the great path swept out. It slammed towards the Divine Palace. Huge rumbles could be heard. Everyone's gazes swept towards the cultivator who had sent out the attack. It was Purple Robe War Emperor of the Holy Land of Taichu. Some local forces of the 9 realms still had some reservations about starting a fight. However, the Purple Robe War Emperor of the Holy Land of Taichu had purposely come from the Divine Prefecture to settle this affair. His first group of people had failed the task previously. Now that he had personally come over, it was impossible for him to tolerate failure. As for what would happen in this battle or what consequences it would bring about, Purple Robe War Emperor did not care. It was sufficient as long as Golden Divine Nation kept their promise. The Holy Land of Taichu would replace Shangxiao Divine Palace to teach the way in the training Holy Land of the higher heavens realms. This time, the might of his attack was more terrifying than before. An unparalleled aura gushed into the Divine Palace. Instantly, cracks actually appeared all over this ancient palace, which was erected on the island in the middle of the Sea of the Path. The cracks were propagating quickly. Rumble. Intense and terrifying sounds could still be heard. The entire island of the Divine Palace sank even further. Many defense matrices were activated. However, they were immediately destroyed. An existence of this level was already beyond what the matrices of the Divine Palace could withstand against. Besides the Divine Palace, no one in the entire 3,000 realms of the Great Path could establish a supermatrix that could withstand a figure of such level. The Divine Palace was about to fall. As they witnessed the scene, some cultivators were stunned and drew in deep breaths. They then realized what was about to happen. This outcome was only natural. It was impossible for a building like the Divine Palace to be able to withstand the shock from today's intense battle. The cultivators who invaded the Divine Palace today, especially this top figure from the Holy Land of Taichu, ignored the authority of Golden Divine Nation and attacked the Divine Palace right away. Would they still care about the collapse of the Divine Palace? In this distance, at the Sea of the Path, numerous cultivators were following the updates of what was happening here through their wills. Many of them had trained in the Divine Palace before. The scenes that played out in their minds caused them to be speechless. They felt dejected. Who would have thought that the Holy Land, which once stood high in the higher heavens realm, would sink in such a manner? The cultivators of the Divine Palace stared at the scene silently, yet their aura was intensifying. The Divine Palace was collapsing. The grand matrix which served as the foundation of the palace had been destroyed. The entire palace was sinking into the sea. The palace lord glanced at what was happening beneath him with a complicated look. He raised his head and stared at the Purple Robe War Emperor. An unparalleled might of the ways suddenly enveloped the entire Divine Palace. The ruins of the palace were surrounded by a dazzling divine light, joining together as one. The ruins floated in space and did not continue to sink. Is it worth it? The Purple Robe War Emperor traversed across the sky. Golden ripples spread throughout the sky and spiraled downwards. With a huge rumble, the Divine Palace continued to sink. Every step that he took was like a terrifying wave, causing the Divine Palace to continue fragmenting while sinking. The palace lord could not stop the palace from being destroyed. In the end, the palace lord decided to let go. With a shift of his will, the divine palace sank into the sea of the path. Purple Robe War Emperor raised his arm and glanced at the palace lord and the other cultivators. He sent out a punch. This punch penetrated the space. The true will of waves of a war god unleashed by him was absolutely terrifying. A choking might enveloped the cultivators of the divine palace. It was impossible for the palace lord to protect everyone. At that moment, there suddenly appeared a peerless divine light that flew over in their direction. It directly flew out and blocked the punch coming their way. Rumble! The peerless punch collided with the object, sweeping up gales and huge waves. The punch that could directly shatter the divine palace could not destroy the object that had appeared. It was a tablet. No one was in control of it. It was as though the tablet was flying on its own. On the tablet, endless divine runes of the great path were carved on it. Even the war god's true will of waves could not shatter this tablet. Even more frightening was that, after this tablet descended, it kept expanding and became a huge heavenly tablet. Had another giant figure of the divine palace attacked? The various cultivators thought to themselves. Outside of the ruins, all the gazes of the people on the sea of the path were directed towards the battlefield. Many of them had heard that the divine palace most likely had more than one mighty existence at the peak of the realm aside from the palace lord. The giant figures especially seemed to know something about it. However, no silhouette had appeared. Instead, the tablet that was floating in the sky released an even more brilliant and eye-catching light. It seemed to be an object without a master. The top figures were staring at the tablet. They revealed fearful looks. This was no mere tablet. They sensed a unique aura from it. At that moment, a sigh came from the tablet. It was the tablet sighing. Futian revealed a strange expression. Could it be that the mysterious cultivator back then in the ancestral lands was? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The eyes of Gai Qiong, Shen Gao, and the other top figures of the last generation were all staring at the tablet. Previously, there were rumors that the existence back then had not died and was cultivating in the divine palace. The eyes of Gai Qiong, Shen Gao, and the other top figures of the last generation were all staring at the tablet. Previously, there were rumors that the existence back then had not died and was cultivating in the divine palace. Was this tablet activated by him? Is that the old palace lord? Gai Tsang was frowning as he also stared in that direction. It didn't seem right. It was not the old palace lord of the divine palace. Emperor Tsang? Gai Tsang exclaimed as he suddenly thought of someone when he sensed the aura. It was a figure who shared his name. The person was a peak figure back during the Age of Turmoil. However, Emperor Tsang of the divine palace was not his name. He was called this due to his powerful technique. Back in the day, Emperor Tsang's cultivation was peerless. He was the most talented figure in the divine palace. He was even more powerful than the divine palace lord of the day. He had forged a flawless divine wheel of the great path, and an upper-level flawless divine wheel at that. An existence of such a level would be a peerless figure even in the entire divine prefecture. However, by right he should have fallen before having cultivated to the peak. Why was it that they all felt that their assumptions were wrong? Back then, the person who lived was Emperor Tsang and not the old palace lord? Gai Qiong said as he also revealed a strange look. These were all matters from long ago. The old palace lord and Emperor Tsang had both suffered severe injuries. It was said that Emperor Tsang had died while the old palace lord had been seriously wounded. Yet, right now, their assumptions seem to have been wrong. I never imagined that there would be people who still remembered me, a voice said from the tablet. Then, the gigantic, endless tablet flew up into the sky and expanded rapidly. It blocked out the sky and the sun, enveloping this entire region of the Sea of the Path. The various cultivators raised their heads and saw an unparalleled divine tablet. On it, endless inscriptions were carved. It radiated with brilliant light, and they could faintly see a silhouette appear in the tablet. It was the silhouette of a middle-aged man. He wore a long white robe. His figure seemed to have merged with the tablet. From the tablet, endless light shone down. Huge rumbles could be heard. Everyone sensed a heavenly might. The heavens seemed to have changed hue and were enveloped by the tablet. Rumble. A huge rumbling sound could be heard. It was as though the sky was falling, and the earth was about to split apart. A god hand appeared and immediately covered the sky, suppressing this region of the sea of the path. Everything was beneath the god hand. "Be careful," someone said. The various cultivators had exceptionally serious looks in their eyes. They all sensed a powerful pressure. The great path in this area seemed to have been suppressed by the god hand. The power of the great path could not circulate successfully. From this, it could be seen how frightening the might of the god hand was. The palm print had yet to come down when its divine might of the great path descended. Some people who did not have strong enough cultivation were directly sent crashing into the sea of the path. They revealed looks of extreme pain. On the sea of the path, waves churned. Everyone was pressured to the point that they found it hard to breathe. Futian and the others stood there, watching. The power was naturally not aimed at them. However, they still could sense the astonishing suppressive force. It was as though that palm had suppressed the entire world. Right then, a silhouette rose up to receive the palm print of the great path. Similarly, a loud resonating sound that filled the heavens could be heard. An unparalleled war god's true will of waves shot up into the sky and collided with the god hand pressing down on them. The dull sound caused the hearts of everyone around to tremble. Purple Robe War Emperor alone rose into the air. He arrived beneath the god hand. As he stood there, he seemed exceptionally minuscule compared to the hand. Yet, he directly raised his arm and punched out towards the god hand. The god hand collided with his punch. A dull thud could be heard. Wave after wave of his war god's true will of waves swept towards the god hand with his fist as the center. In an instant, tens of thousands of vibrations erupted. Rumble. There was a huge sound, and the god hand collapsed. The terrifying punch was also shattered. Purple Robe War Emperor's figure plummeted downwards. At the same time, there were explosions in the sea of the path below, and sea water splashed up. The scene was very frightening. From the tablet, endless divine light shone down. Countless large handprints actually flew out from it. Each handprint had frightening power. They directly slaughtered their way in the direction where the army was in the sea of the path. Gai Qiong's figure also moved. He took a step forward, and the heavenly might of the great path burst forth from him. The endless space seemed to be completely enveloped within his will. A golden divine spear appeared in his hand and pierced into the space. The giant handprints in the space were immediately shattered into dust. Purple Robe War Emperor's forceful attack had already ruined everything. Now they had no choice but to battle it out. The tablet spun in the heavens above. Endless divine light shot out from it. Each beam of divine light contained a large handprint. Their destructive power was astonishing. "Everyone attack," Gai Tsong said in a loud voice. In the current situation, Gai Tsong's side still held the advantage. They actually could not sense the person's aura. It was possible that the other party had very weak cultivation, or he could also be very powerful. However, this was deep within the sea of the path. How could someone who was very weak end up here? This caused some people to feel uneasy. Could it be that Futian still had a trump card? Right at this moment, the figure with a straw hat, who stood at the fore, raised his head and looked at the crowd. He had a pair of terrifying eyes. The pair of dark, demonic eyes were emotionless and cold. His gaze was like the gaze of a grim reaper. Retreat! The cultivators from Shun clan came to their senses. It was him. He had disappeared since the battle a few years ago. Nobody had expected that he would actually appear in the sea of the path today during this crucial battle. It turned out that the figure on the lone boat was none other than Sky River Great Elder. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Sky River Great Elder had committed a massacre in Shun clan before. Many cultivators of Shun clan had fallen to him. Even the Great Elder, Shinji, was injured by Sky River Great Elder before the leader of Shin Clan could wound him and force him to retreat. Sky River Great Elder had not appeared since the battle when the Heavenly Mandate Academy led their army to confront Shin Clan. Sky River Great Elder had committed a massacre in Shin Clan before. Many cultivators of Shin Clan had fallen to him. Even the Great Elder, Shinji, was injured by Sky River Great Elder before the leader of Shin Clan could wound him and force him to retreat. Sky River Great Elder had not appeared since the battle when the Heavenly Mandate Academy led their army to confront Shin Clan. Some said that Sky River Great Elder had fallen into the demonic way and had most likely destroyed himself. Some said that he had gone crazy and was missing. However, at this very moment, he silently appeared in the sea of the path. He calmly sat on the lone boat in the middle of the sea. If their current location was not the sea of the path, strangers would really treat Sky River Great Elder as an ordinary man. Sky River Great Elder had broken through the plain in the past. When cultivators of Shin Clan saw him, their first instinct was to run away from him. At the moment, the giant figures had yet to come over here. When facing a cultivator at the level of Sky River Great Elder, there was no point in having a large number of people. They could not possibly defeat him. If they were to engage in a battle with him, they would suffer great losses. It's Sky River Great Elder. The cultivators of Golden Divine Nation and the other forces also managed to react to all this. They frantically retreated and prepared to escape from this place. A terrifying crimson light shot out from Sky River Great Elder's eyes. Even though he was merely standing there quietly, the vast space was instantly enveloped by a horrifying aura. Endless crimson demonic light filled the heavens and earth, as though there were streaks of crimson lightning flashing in the sky. The Sky River Great Elder took a step forward and directly walked into the crowd of cultivators. The will of the crowd burst forth, and their figures retreated hastily. However, streaks of crimson lightning shot out like blood-red swords. The bodies of many cultivators with weaker cultivation were directly penetrated by the crimson lightning, and they were locked in place in midair. Among these people, most of them were cultivators of Shin Clan. They faced the most tragic fate. Obviously, even though Sky River Great Elder had slaughtered his way into Shin Clan before, he had not forgotten his vengeance in the past up until now. He had never forgotten about the death of his daughter, his 3,000 disciples, and other members of Sky River Temple. This vengeance could only be abetted by the fresh blood of Shin Clan members. After the battle at Shin Clan, he left and gradually gained control over the demonic item. However, he still did not go to meet his wife, Shin Luoxue. It was not because he didn't miss her, but rather because he was remorseful. He felt guilty towards Shin Luoxue. He was ashamed to meet her both in the past and now. In the past, he had not been able to protect Shin Luoxue and their daughter, Nongyue. Their daughter was killed, and Shin Luoxue was imprisoned by Shin Clan for many years. However, he was not able to do anything and could only quietly train alone. He swallowed his pride and endured the suffering. He did not dare to reveal even a slight hint of his ambition. He had failed too many people. On this day, he intended to kill members of Shin Clan and commit a massacre within the clan. As long as he was still alive, his biggest goal would be eradicating Shin Clan until not one of them was left. He could not let go of this hatred. However, he was well aware that his wife, Shin Luoxue, originated from Shin Clan. Even though she had cut ties with the clan and did not have any feelings for the clan now, it was something that could not be changed. The bloodline of Shin Clan members also coursed in Shin Luoxue's veins. They shared the same origins. Under such circumstances, if he asked Shin Luoxue to kill the members of the Shin Clan, could she really do so? He had decided to eradicate Shin Clan and eliminate the clansmen of his wife. There was no way he could face his wife, not now nor in the past. In the current age of turmoil, when Heavenly Mandate Academy and Yi Futian faced a huge crisis, only then had he appeared and found Yi Futian. Not many people knew about this. Shin Luoxue also did not know about his appearance. Yi Futian merely left a demonic rat by his side to serve as a means of communication. The demonic rat was naturally from the Purple Gold Rat clan and was under his control. It was trembling at this moment. Rumble. The endless crimson lightning drawn from the heavens above actually became a frightening crimson divine furnace. Miserable screams could be heard. The cultivators that had been pierced through by the crimson lightning were all smelted. It was extremely wretched. Sky River Great Elder, a cultivator of Shin Clan, roared. A frightening golden divine halo was unleashed from his body. Extremely brilliant golden lightning directly cleaved the space. It was the Tianshin cleave technique. Yet, a terrifying crimson glow directly attacked the golden halo that cleaved the space and caused it to explode into fragments. Sky River Great Elder stepped forward and extended his palm across the space. He recognized many of the senior members of Shin Clan. After all, he was previously a son-in-law of Shin Clan and had spent some time living and training in Shin Clan. He was familiar with many of the seniors. Nevertheless, now, they were mortal enemies. He would not stop until they were all dead. Sky River Great Elder extended his palm towards the cultivator of Shin Clan and suddenly clenched it. A loud scream could be heard. The face of the cultivator was contorted, and he was in extreme pain. The crimson demonic light pierced to his figure, then his figure immediately exploded into pieces, and his soul dissipated. The members of the other forces instantly escaped in all directions. When faced with a cultivator whose planes surpassed their own, even if they might be able to put up a fight if they joined forces, the first person who attacked would surely die first. Under such circumstances, everyone wanted to preserve their own life first and ensure their own survival. But Sky River Great Elder's silhouette became a frightening bolt of crimson lightning. Above the sea of the path, fresh blood constantly rained down on the world below. Many people perished in the sky above the sea of the path. They would be forever buried here. Futian and the others were also slightly astonished when they saw the scene. Aside from Futian, the people here seemed to have not known that Sky River Great Elder was here. From the looks of it, Futian had intentionally arranged for this. This way, even if they had been chased by figures at the peak, they still had cultivators who could keep one or two of them in check. Of course, if the disparity was too great, even if Sky River Great Elder killed off a few powerful existences, the situation would still not change. They could only submit to their fates then. Aside from that, Sky River Great Elder's methods were too dominant. They could even be considered cruel. He did not seem like a famous sage who once taught the way in the Tianhe realm. Instead, he seemed like a bona fide demonic figure. However, when the crowd thought of everything that Sky River Great Elder had been through, they could empathize with him. He had practiced forbearance for many years. Sky River Great Elder had demonstrated very high endurance by not going insane after suffering for so long. Otherwise, he would not have lasted until this day. Now, him descending into the demonic way was also due to what Shin Clan did back then. Shin Clan had previously acted too harshly. They had initiated a war to destroy a realm and had killed countless cultivators of the Tianhe realm. No one could have done better if they were in Sky River Great Elder's position. Everything that Shin Clan was facing now was a matter of cause and effect. If they had not been so cruel, they would not have forced Sky River Great Elder to become what he was today. Futian was also looking at the battle. Grandmaster had indeed joined the demonic way. He acquired a demonic divine item. It was not easy for him to gain control of the demonic power contained within the item. Futian had no idea about the whereabouts of his grandmaster for these past few years. He had never visited the Heavenly Mandate Academy before. Futian speculated that his grandmaster had been living in agony. After all, Grandmaster refrained himself from visiting the Heavenly Mandate Academy even after his wife had joined the academy for training. Grandmaster had shunned them up until now. He finally appeared when Futian was facing a crisis. Although Grandmaster was a demon when he was facing Shin Clan and all the other enemies, Futian could not find fault with the way Grandmaster treated him. Futian felt so even though he felt like he had never understood Grandmaster before. He hadn't even gotten to know Grandmaster properly. When Futian was training in the Tianhe realm, most likely, Grandmaster was also living in hatred during that period of time. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura drew near. Frowning, Futian and his group looked up in the direction where the aura came from. A figure dressed in white robes rushed towards here. It was none other than the cultivator from the Holy Land of Taichu, who led his group to challenge the Heavenly Mandate Academy before this. This cultivator was also a giant figure. Even though he was not as powerful as the Purple Robe War Emperor, who came from the lower worlds, he was also a top figure in the Holy Land of Taichu. This cultivator had been waiting for his chance. After he had escaped from the battlefield on the other side, he rushed here. Without hesitation, he dashed and pounced at Sky River Great Elder, who was in the middle of the battle. Sky River Great Elder swept a glance at him and similarly walked towards him. This part of the sky was tainted by crimson demonic light, as though doomsday had arrived. "Let's go," Yi Futian said as he turned and retreated. Today, the Holy Land of Taichu had initiated the battle to provoke this dispute. It was already too late for them to cease. Since they had already reached this stage and their top figures were at a disadvantage, they could only try their hardest to escape unscathed. Although the Divine Palace had been sunk into the Sea of the Path, as long as the cultivators of the Divine Palace were still alive, the Divine Palace still existed. Currently, Yi Futian was most worried about the other battlefield. He did not know whether Emperor Nan could withstand his opponent. Sky River Great Elder and the white-robed cultivator of the Holy Land of Taichu instantly collided into one another. Astonishing destructive light swept out. Beyond the terrifying battle, Yi Futian and the others continued hastily escaping. "Don't let Yi Futian escape," a sinister voice sounded. In an instant, the cultivators who were originally dispersing in different directions moved forwards one by one. They showed signs of gathering as they continued to hunt Yi Futian and his group. "Spread out," Yi Futian ordered. "Don't spread out. Their target is you," a cultivator objected decisively. If their group escaped in different directions, the cultivator was certain that all the opponents would chase after Yi Futian. After all, for those forces, killing Yi Futian was far more important than killing anyone else in their group. Palace Lord and Emperor Tsong are holding the fort in the Divine Palace. Emperor Nan is there too, Jiang Qingzi of the Celestial Gate of Vast Heaven analyzed. Even though they don't have an advantage in terms of numbers, they might not lose. It is enough to send away the first group of people from this battlefield. The rest of the cultivators should gather together. As long as none of the top figures come over here, we are capable of putting up a fight. The rest of them nodded in agreement. They were prepared to have a good fight anyway. All right, Yi Futian felt a warmth inside. He did not reject the good intentions of the others. He only hoped that the Divine Palace would not lose in its most important battle. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1795 Under the Divine Sword. Chapter 1795 Under the Divine Sword. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy continued escaping hastily. The white-robed elder rushed to delay Sky River Great Elder. Hence, the cultivators of the other forces continued to pursue Yi Futian's group. Even though Sky River Great Elder slaughtered many of their members, their lineup was still more powerful than that of Yi Futian's group. After all, they had gathered an extremely powerful army before they came over. They even included many forces of the higher heavens realm, such as Sky-Burying God Clan. They were in the same predicament as the cultivators of the Divine Palace. They all clearly knew that since they had reached this stage now, they had to act decisively. They could not depend on any element of luck. Only by eradicating the other party could they absolutely guarantee their own safety. They could not do anything about the battle between the top figures. However, this battlefield belonged to them. At the very least, they had to kill one person, Yi Futian from the Heavenly Mandate Academy. As long as Yi Futian was killed, the opponent's alliance would most likely face collapse. If that occurred, their opponent would pose less of a threat to them. The cultivators who were proficient in the Great Path of Space were the fastest in terms of speed. Many members of the forces like Shen Clan and Golden Divine Nation were proficient in this. Some of the figures at the peak of the Renhuang Plain were the first to catch up to Yi Futian's group. A top figure of Shen Clan cleaved down with his palm. In the distance, golden lightning appeared in the sky. It slashed the space apart and cleaved towards the crowd of cultivators. Another cultivator stepped forward, and his divine wheel of the great path appeared. Beams of divine light shot out and slaughtered their way to the crowd in the distance. But gales swept past. A cultivator from Divine Palace's Sword Palace turned around and slashed up into the sky. Divine swords swept across the heavens, slashing towards the other party. It seemed as though it could tear apart the heavens and the earth. From all directions, other cultivators attacked, restricting Yi Futian's group from leaving. There were cultivators from Yi Futian's group that turned around, one after another, and joined the fight. Instantly, the arts of supreme attack of the Great Path constantly collided in the sky above the sea of the path. Ritual implements flew out in all directions. Divine lightning descended from the heavens. Golden divine light split the air, and swords of the Great Path cleaved the heavens. Countless attacks exploded, and waves churned on the sea of the path. The sea was wild and violent and seemed as though it was roaring. Yi Futian's group kept advancing. Other people blocked off the raging storm of the Great Path for Yi Futian. These people had the most intense killing intent directed at him. They could even be considered resolute. All of them wanted him to die in the sea of the path. The person who led Yi Futian in his escape was the wife of Sky River Great Elder, the cultivator of Shen clan, Shen Luoxue. She said to Yi Futian, "Although he has killed many cultivators, the number of our cultivators is still less than theirs. I will go and hold off some of them. All of you, continue escaping. Their target is you. Escape as far away from the battlefield of upper-level Renhuangs as you can." "All right," Yi Futian said as he nodded his head. He did not say any more. Shen Luoxue turned around. Her Tianxin divine halo radiated and enveloped the endless space, cutting off the path of many cultivators pursuing them. Long story short, all of this occurred in a blink of an eye. Within this short amount of time, a huge battle exploded along the sea of the path. Currently, the number of cultivators that were advancing with Yi Futian had reduced by quite a bit. Yi Futian looked into the distance. The shore could be vaguely seen. They were close to reaching the land and fort. As talented figures, they moved at an incredible speed. There were fewer and fewer cultivators who were still hunting them, and those with a high plane of cultivation were few. Many of the opponents were engaged in battles with Yi Futian's alliance members. Cultivators from Shen clan, the Heavenly Mandate Academy, and various forces of the Heavenly Mandate realm participated in this battle. Many of them were giant figures in their respective territories. This battle could definitely be considered the largest battle in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path since Donghuang the Great unified the Divine Prefecture. Many top forces and giant figures were involved in it. Let alone in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, the scale of this battle was most likely rare even in the outer realms of the Divine Prefecture. This large-scale war erupted due to the current age of turmoil. But a gale swept past, and golden divine light dazzled. 3 upper-level Renhuangs continued to pursue Yi Futian. Jiang Qingzi was the only one left beside Yi Futian. On the contrary, on the opponent's team, not only were there 3 upper-level Renhuangs approaching them from 3 different directions, but there were also quite a few middle-level Renhuangs trailing them from a distance. A brilliant golden divine light sliced towards them. Jiang Qingzi guided Yi Futian to dodge the attack. The terrifying divine light darted past his body. It was only inches away from hitting him. "You should go," Yi Futian said to Jiang Qingzi. Jiang Qingzi looked at him. "I am capable of defending myself," Yi Futian said. Jiang Qingzi nodded. A domineering aura was unleashed. He swiftly turned around and pounced at a cultivator who had an 8th-tier divine wheel. That was the most he could do for Yi Futian. Yi Futian glanced at him and took a step forward in the air. He continued to move towards the shore. The other 2 7th-tier divine wheel upper-level Renhuangs and the middle-level Renhuangs, who were still a distance away, rushed towards Yi Futian. Their speed was astonishing. A glint of malice flashed past in their eyes. They reckoned Yi Futian could not possibly escape from their hunt this time. One of the 2 7th-tier divine wheel cultivators was from Shen clan, while the other one was from Golden Divine Nation. Both of them had their eyes dead set on Yi Futian. After all, these 2 forces had the strongest vendetta with Yi Futian. When they saw Yi Futian escaping, They were the ones who were the most enthusiastic about pursuing him. Before this, the appearance of Sky River Great Elder caused these two forces to suffer great losses. However, they held the greatest advantage in this battle, so the outcome of this battle would not be changed. Even if the Divine Palace could really dodge the fate of being eradicated today, as long as Yi Futian was killed, the alliances he formed would fall apart as well. When that happened, the Divine Palace would never be able to rise again. At that moment, Yi Futian's figure came to a halt. He had already arrived at the edge of the sea of the path. He turned around and looked at the people who were pursuing him. Far off in the distance, along the shore of the sea, silhouettes looked up into the distant sky of the sea of the path. Their hearts trembled intensely when they sensed the terrifying aura from there. The people approaching were the members of the top forces. The confrontation between Golden Divine Nation and the Divine Palace was known by all in the higher heavens realm. The huge battle over there was also the attention of the realm. How was this battle going to end? "Who is that?" someone asked as they looked at Yi Futian. Why were so many cultivators pursuing him? The aura on his body was only that of the second-tier divine wheel. He actually drew the attention of so many powerful figures. This was too crazy. Wasn't it enough to have a middle-level Renhuang to kill a second-tier divine will cultivator? There were so many cultivators, yet all of them dashed towards him instead of going to help out on other battlefields. It looked like they really prioritized this youth in white robes. "He has white hair and white robes. Who else can he be?" Someone answered. "He is Yi Futian from the Heavenly Mandate Academy. He is a legend in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. He is known as the most powerful person of his generation. No one can compare to him." That was him. The crowd nodded their heads when they heard this. Then, what was happening came as no surprise. Such a powerful lineup of cultivators had even forsaken aiding the other battlefields in order to pursue this person. This must be because of how important Yi Futian was. Capturing Yi Futian would be halfway to ending the war. After Yi Futian came to a stop, the other party also did not rush to attack. Two upper-level Renhuangs appeared before him. The middle-level Renhuangs behind them also gradually caught up. They surrounded him. Very soon, the space was packed. Right now, they were wondering whether to capture Yi Futian alive or dead. In such a situation, it would be hard for Yi Futian to escape. Yi Futian stood in mid-air as he glanced at the surrounding crowd of people. He naturally could sense his opponent's auras. The two upper-level Renhuangs in front of him stood there staring at him. Many middle-level Renhuangs circled around and surrounded him. Their wills pressured down on his body. At this moment, he was like a fish caught in a net. "Slay him," one of them ordered. The upper-level Renhuang from Golden Divine Nation wielded a Golden Divine Spear, and his killing intent was alarming. All the middle-level Renhuangs lunged at Yi Futian. Their ways transformed into different weapons. But a dazzling golden light shot out from Yi Futian's glabella. This beam of light expanded quickly and transformed into a spatial sacred hall. Everyone frowned in confusion. A sacred item? Those middle-level Renhuangs who were approaching Yi Futian dashed into the spatial sacred hall, preventing him from hiding inside the hall. In an instant, the expanding spatial sacred hall engulfed both Yi Futian and those middle-level Renhuangs. The two seventh-tier divine wheel upper-level Renhuangs did not enter the hall. They were standing guard outside. Even though Yi Futian used a spatial treasure, those middle-level Renhuangs would most likely be sufficient to kill him since their cultivation was higher than his. A divine sword appeared in Yi Futian's hand. It was glittering with brilliant sparkles. It was yet another powerful sacred item. He was also garbed in armor. Naturally, Yi Futian would utilize all the treasures that he obtained from the god's relic. As soon as the divine sword appeared, it emitted a ring which resonated with the air. Its sword will was intense, and it flowed towards the surroundings, forming an encirclement. Divine light could even be seen glowing faintly in Yi Futian's body. The cultivators who were surrounding Yi Futian frowned. What was happening? Streaks of divine light on Yi Futian's body shone brighter as time passed. A terrifying art of supreme attack blasted towards him and was actually crushed into dust by the sword will around his body. The divine light intensified. At this moment, it was as though Yi Futian was draped with a divine golden light shield around him. He was majestic. He unleashed the Guqin divine wheel. Countless strings of Guqin appeared in the space. Each string of Guqin emanated an unparalleled golden divine light. Sword will course through the strings. Twang! A ringing sound could be heard. Golden strings of Guqin, flowing with sword will, crisscrossed in the space. A cultivator stood on his spot. He could sense that there were strings of Guqin continually penetrating his surroundings. The strings slowly enclosed the space. It was as though they were forming an independent space of the Great Path. Rumble! Extremely brilliant light of the divine wheel of the Great Path rained down on all of the cultivators. An extremely powerful aura burst forth from the bodies of the various cultivators. Their divine wheels radiated. However, at this moment, they actually felt that their own divine wheels were no match for Yi Futian's. A divine halo shot out from Yi Futian's body. It spread upward and caused the various cultivators to shut their eyes in pain. The expressions of the surrounding cultivators all changed. Was this the Emperor's light? He truly received the teachings of the great Emperor in the God's relic. The cultivators of Shun clan and Golden Divine Nation had extremely interesting facial expressions. Was this his true ability? He had been hiding it all along. He had previously said in the God's relic that he had received the teachings of the great Emperor. Right now, the scene that they were witnessing seemed to validate the arrogant things that he had previously said. He had received the teachings of the great Emperor, and the deities had witnessed this. Yi Futian lifted his sword, and divine light pierced the heavens. In this space, the will of the swords resonated and formed a world of the sword. Die! Yi Futian uttered this in a cold tone. Once he said this, the divine sword in his hand flew out. The great path resonated, and divine sounds could be heard all around. A middle-level Renhuang unleashed a powerful attack to block the divine sword. However, under the light of the divine sword, his figure actually turned to dust immediately, returning to nothingness. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1796 Fighting Upper-Level Renhuangs. Chapter 1796 Fighting Upper-Level Renhuang's divine sword light cut through the air, destroying everything everywhere it passed. A mid-level Renhuang with a 5th-tier divine will transformed into a golden body, giving off a frightening amount of power. He was now armored in gold. But the sword light pierced right through his golden armor in an instant. His body was then shattered into nothingness. Slice, slice, slice. Sounds rang out as most of the cultivators who had entered the spatial sacred hall were suddenly slain. Those who were left alive fled, their auras surging, and their eyes filled with fear. They stared at the divine radiance that was upon Yi Futian. What is this? They looked all about themselves. The golden radiance was everywhere. Lines of invisible sword will had completely filled the world around them, becoming one with it. It seemed that this area of the world was now a realm of swordsmanship that would not permit any other kind of will to enter it. And Yi Futian seemed to be the master of this new world. As he cultivated to higher levels, the more he came to understand the will of the Emperor, and the better he was able to sense it. Now, he could even faintly sense what kind of thing the will of the Emperor was, and he could urge it on to an even stronger level. Yi Futian gripped his divine sword. He twirled his wrist, and the sword will all around them hummed. Suddenly, there was the sound of clattering swords as all the Guqin strings that were formed out of sword will resonated with this, filling the area with terrifying sword chi. Slice, slice. The incredibly sharp sword shot out towards the few still living cultivators with 6th-tier divine wheels. The great path auras around them were shattered by the sword will. They looked at Yi Futian with terror in their eyes. At this moment, Yi Futian was extremely dangerous. He was using the power of the great path to crush them. Yi Futian stepped towards one of them. He moved very slowly, but with every step, sword will slash through the air towards the few cultivators with 6th-tier divine wheels. At that moment, the man he was walking towards gripped his ritual implement, which was a magic cloak. He threw it out in front of him, where it turned into a terrifying black hole that sucked in all the sword will around it. The huge vortex grew more and more fearsome until it blocked out the sun, stretching out towards where Yi Futian was. It tried to suck him into it. A battle of life or death like this was completely different from a sparring match. Many of the cultivators had ritual implements and were highly ranked in their various forces, meaning their ritual implements were extremely powerful. After all, powerful forces would not lack for powerful ritual implements. However, compared to the divine sword that Yi Futian had taken from the god's relic, the cloak was far inferior. It was not at the same level. After all, the man who possessed it was only a mid-level renhuang. He was no great figure of high status. The ritual implement he was using could only give him so much combat ability. Of course, he still had the advantage in terms of level. Yi Futian was sucked up into the cloak. He transformed into a beam of light that swept into the black hole. But in the next moment, brilliant divine light bloomed, and a gap appeared in the black hole. The light of the divine sword burst forth, and a figure burst out of the ritual implement, turning into a bolt of lightning that shot towards the bearer of the cloak. The sword fell extremely quickly, and Yi Futian appeared right behind the cultivator with the 6th-tier divine wheel. In the next instant, the man burst into pieces and disappeared. Yi Futian's sword art had turned him to dust. Fear shone in the eyes of the other few cultivators. They could sense that Yi Futian's current power was greater than their own. He himself had only a 2nd-tier divine wheel, but under the power of the will of the emperor, his aura had climbed to a whole new level. This was in addition to his perfect divine wheel. And not only that, his wheel was fused with the will of the emperor as well as the power of the divine sword. When the pressure of the great path skyrocketed again, there was a change in his nature. The people who had come to kill him did not even have perfect divine wheels. Thus, even though they were of the 6th tier, they were still crushed. Many mid-level renhuangs had been cut into pieces. The remaining 6 tiers did not have a chance. The cultivators watching all of this from the cliffs were shocked. Even the higher-level battles far away were ignored as they started at Yi Futian's fight. The battle was simply astonishing. Golden, divine radiance had transformed Yi Futian. He stood there, bathed in divine light with his white hair and clothing. There was an air of incomparable nobility about him. It was as if the great emperor had descended to earth. They knew that this aura about him was due to the divine radiance which itself had come from the inheritance of someone at the emperor's level. It must have been the inheritance that he had gained in the god's relic. Previously, they had only known Yi Futian as the so-called greatest genius of his generation in the 9 realms, but they would never have thought that he was this terrifying. He had slain a whole crowd of mid-level renhuangs. 6th-tier renhuangs trembled before him and did not dare attack him. They tried to flee but were trapped. Not long before, they had pursued Yi Futian, regarding him as little more than an insect. Now it seemed like they were the insects. Outside the spatial sacred hall, the 2 cultivators with 7th-tier divine wheels had ugly looks on their faces. They had no way to support their fellows. The cultivator from the Shun clan waved his hand, and a huge ritual implement cauldron appeared in the air above the sea, right above the spatial sacred hall. The cauldron rotated, and divine light flashed off it, covering the area. He clenched his fist, and suddenly the cauldron fell. Endless destructive golden lightning appeared from within it, striking the spatial sacred hall and making it tremble. It fell downward and seemed like it would drop into the sea, but it could not be destroyed. It was a top-level ritual implement and was thus stronger than the other cultivators. Thus, it could not be broken by them. At that moment, Yi Futian waved his sword again, and another person fell. Several cultivators had been hunted down and slain by him already. It was truly a preposterous situation. How could a single cultivator with only a 2nd-tier divine will take on such a powerful formation? Such a thing would have meant death even for a top-level renhuang with a 7th-tier divine wheel. They had come with enough force to deal with even a great figure. But now, facing Yi Futian with his 2nd-tier divine wheel, they were put at a disadvantage. The ritual implement cauldron continued to fall, thousands of bolts of lightning splitting the air around it, trying to break the spatial sacred hall. But all this did was make ear-piercing sounds ring out from it. No, the cultivator from the Shun clan let out a low moan. Someone else had been slain by Yi Futian. It was his younger brother. Before long, Yi Futian was the only one left living in the spatial sacred hall. The others had all been slain. Not a single one had been left alive. When they had chased him, none of them would have thought that he would be so powerful. At that moment, Yi Futian looked up from within the spatial sacred hall. Then the hall disappeared, returning to Yi Futian's body. Suddenly, Yi Futian appeared in the air above the sea. He was floating there, shining with a terrible golden radiance that dyed the sky. The two 7th-tier divine will cultivators finally felt the true power of that radiance. They faintly felt like they should fall down and worship him. Is he really such a strong heir? They looked at Yi Futian and could clearly feel the power of the will of the emperor. This seemed to really be a power that Yi Futian had been born with. It was the inheritance of the great emperor. They had only heard of the things that had happened in the god's relic. What inheritance had Yi Futian gained on that day? Probably only he knew. At that moment, beams of terrible consciousness stretched out towards them, covering a vast area. All of the cultivators fighting in the air above the sea shifted their gaze towards Yi Futian. It seemed that they could all sense his vast power. Divine light shone from the eyes of the cultivator of the Shun clan with the 7th-tier divine wheel and streaked towards Yi Futian, suppressing his will. But all he saw was a pair of terrifying eyes. Within Yi Futian's gaze, an ultimate divine figure stood there like a mighty emperor, guarding his will. At the same time, the clouds up above changed. The flowing power of the great path made the two cultivators with 7th-tier divine wheels feel as if mystical illusions had appeared all around them, and they were losing contact with the world around them. They were both of very high level and had great command of the great path, but at this moment, a strange thing occurred. It felt like they were being suppressed by the very source of the great path. This meant that even though Yi Futian was of a lower level than them, his cultivation of the great path was higher than theirs. This was a contradiction, but it had really happened. The way of the emperor, they thought. They could not wait any longer. At that moment, the two upper-level Renhuangs with 7th-tier divine wheels felt threatened by someone with only a 2nd-tier divine wheel. If this had been said out loud, no one would have believed it. But at that moment, it was really happening. This absolutely went against the rules of cultivation. Even someone with a perfect divine will facing someone with an imperfect one could not ignore such a difference in level. The distance between a lower-level Renhuang and an upper-level one was like the distance between the earth and the sky. The cultivator from the Shun clan pointed at Yi Futian, and suddenly, thousands of rays of divine radiance shone from the cauldron in the sky. The golden light transformed into an unmatchable space-ripping power. It tore through the air, destroying everything in its path. The divine sword in Yi Futian's hand cried violently. He flew up into the air where endless sword will was flowing. The sword will collided with the oncoming radiance and was just barely able to block the attack. The sword continued crying without end. Waves of power swept out through the air above the sea. The cultivator of the Shun clan stepped forward, and suddenly the cauldron pressed downward yet again. The radiance grew even more terrible. "You're still not doing anything?" The cultivator of the Shun clan asked the upper-level Renhuang of the Golden Divine Nation beside him. There was no point in trying to save face now. They could not make that mistake again. It was crucial that they slay Yi Futian. The cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation nodded and stepped forward. The image of a celestial god appeared in the sky, giving off the sigh of the divine god. A golden spear appeared in his hands, which was in itself a powerful ritual implement. Destructive golden radiance shone from it. Two upper-level Renhuangs were facing a single lower-level Renhuang with a 2nd-tier divine wheel. This scene left everyone watching from the seaside cliffs speechless as they stared at the battlefield. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Boom. Boom. The cultivator from the Golden Divine Nation with the 7th-tier divine will stepped forward, and the sigh of the divine god rang out in the sky. He thrust his golden spear through the air. Golden light shot towards Yi Futian at an incredible speed. It seemed like it would pierce through him in an instant. There was a sharp sound as the golden light struck his body. The figure disappeared as if it had never even existed. But there was spatial will left behind in the place where it had been. It was an afterimage. The cultivator of the golden divine nation looked up. Yi Futian had appeared in the sky above him. The cultivator realized he was in grave danger. Given his level, he had no way to lock down Yi Futian in a space like this. A high-level cultivator could lock down someone of a lower level's divine consciousness. This was a common understanding in the world of cultivators. As long as one's divine consciousness was locked, they could not escape control while they were within a certain range. However, at this moment, he found that he could not lock down Yi Futian. This probably had to do with the great path of space in this area. The imperial radiance was shining down on them, and now Yi Futian's sword will seem to have turned this place into his own private sword realm. The cultivator of the Shun clan realized this as well. He looked up at Yi Futian. Within him, his powerful aura raged, and his divine will burst to life. His sevenfold cauldron shone with the incomparably brilliant light of the great path as it flew back to him, re-entering his divine wheel. The two objects merged, and suddenly even brighter light shone forth. The wheel of the great path flew out, and lines of terrible, destructive golden light shot out in all directions. There was nowhere to go to avoid it. He slammed his hands forward, and suddenly the combined cauldron and divine wheel flew up into the sky. Golden light streamed down from it in all directions. Yi Futian's figures disappeared one after another as he fled away from it. To him, the power of the great path that was put forth from a seventh-tier divine wheel was dangerous indeed. Brilliant golden light shone from the cultivator of the golden divine nation as well. He seemed to have transformed into a god, so celestial was his figure. He raised his hand and violently thrust his spear forward. Boom! A dull roar rang through the air. Yi Futian's field of sword will was shaken, and his figure flickered. A bolt of golden lightning swept across the sky, striking right in front of him. The Shun clan cultivator struck as well. When Yi Futian saw what was going on, he struck out with his sword. Brilliant sword light shone from it. All of the sword will in the area was integrated into it, and it resonated with the way of swordsmanship. It destroyed everything in its path as it collided with the Shun clan cultivator's spatial palm print. Bang! The palm print was destroyed, but Yi Futian was sent flying backwards, his field of sword will shaken. He stared at his opponent. An upper-level Renhuang was indeed many levels above him. Even using the will of the emperor, it was difficult to make up the gap in their power. Moreover, his opponents were unleashing the power of their divine wheels without stopping. They were seizing control of the great path in the area around them. In the space of single thought, Yi Futian unleashed even more holy divine path light. The radiance of the great path swept out, stretching out through the air in all directions. In an instant, it had filled a vast area. The countless streams of flowing great path radiance made the two cultivators with seventh-tier divine wheels frown. What was this now? The earth and sky changed. The whole world seemed to be changing. They could feel that they were in another great path domain, one that was completely independent. The divine imperial light spread through the great path domain like roots and leaves, filling an endless area. The sun and moon appeared, along with stars and ancient trees. It seemed that they were no longer in the world that they had just been in. Even the will here seemed different than before. It had become much stronger. They had known that Yi Futian had a fourth divine wheel, a boundary wheel. Moreover, everyone knew that this was a very powerful kind of wheel. But there were few people who truly understood it. Only Shen Hao did and Diwu. At that moment, they were now within the boundaries of this new world. The two of them realized that when they unleashed the power of their own divine wheels, they had no control over this world. They could not master its will. It made them feel like they were all alone in the world. Yi Futian now had the will of the emperor as well as his own world. He stood there bathed in divine light with his snow-white hair, making the two others feel that he truly was the descendant of some ultimate figure and that he had inherited his willpower. Otherwise, how could he be so powerful? Yi Futian released the power of his divine wheels and that of the will of the emperor. All of the divine wheels transformed, including the fourth one. This gave off a mystical feeling. It was as if he was the absolute master of this world. To those watching from outside, Futian and the two others had disappeared. Motes of radiances floated like leaves, covering the whole area. The great path from the outside world was flowing in violently, sucked in by the independent world. "What kind of realm is this?" asked the Shun clan cultivator, staring at Futian. He was an upper-level Renhuang with a 7th-tier divine wheel. This was the first time he had been surprised by someone with a 2nd-tier divine wheel. Futian gazed at the two of them. Space was frozen, and it seemed as if time had stopped flowing, blocking his movements. Bang! He stepped forward forcefully with great speed, and divine light bloomed from him. He controlled himself, breaking free of Futian's influence. At that moment, Futian stopped walking. Sword will resonated across the vast area, and countless beams of divine sword light gathered together violently. He raised his divine sword as he stared at his opponent, saying, "There is also the sword of innocence." In the instant that he said this, countless divine swords cut through the air. The great path flowed backward, and sword will roared as it sped towards his opponent. At the same time, Futian disappeared. A sword was born, and everything else was destroyed. The sword was able to destroy the air itself. Seeing Futian's attack coming, the cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation raised his spear without any hesitation. He thrust it straight towards Futian. Given his level, he would believe that he was weaker than Futian. Although he had been surprised here, he still had absolute confidence in himself. The sound of the god's sigh rang out, and the spear moved forward forcefully. The two attacks slammed into each other, their incomparably terrifying might giving off a frightening radiance. The cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation's spear struck an afterimage, piercing right through it. Futian's divine sword cut into the throat of the mighty celestial figure, but his body turned golden. His defensive power was truly shocking. It was like he was armored in gold. Boom! The figure that was as mighty as a god fell backward as the sword cut into his golden throat. Golden blood flowed from the wound. But in what seemed like an instant, another attack struck. The Tianshan cleave slashed towards Futian. Another afterimage was struck as Futian disappeared. His opponent's divine consciousness could not lock him down, and so his attacks could not follow him. This was his world. There are things both real and illusory here. Up in the air, Futian looked down on his two opponents. In this world, as long as they gave him time, he would kill them sooner or later. At that moment, the cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation stood firm. He placed his hand over the wound in his throat. Terrible golden light shot out of his eyes towards Futian. Futian had wounded him with a single attack. In this area of great path space, the two of them were extremely limited, but Futian was not. This was his great path domain world, where he had absolute control. The two of them were of high level, but they still could not use their divine wheels to seize control over an entire world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. It was unlikely, then, that the people that he had made Yusheng follow only changed due to the god's relic. Mei Ting obviously did not believe this. In his divine consciousness, the battlefield where Futian was closed off. The endless might of the great path swept through the area. Futian had created his own world there. At that moment, the two 7th-tier cultivators who were inside his world both looked rather downcast as they stared at Futian. He had just wounded the 7th-tier, upper-level Renhuang of the Golden Divine Nation. The Shun clan cultivator had attacked but had been unable to hit Futian. Futian gripped his sword, and sword will surged into the heavens. He looked at the two of them. The two 7th-tier cultivators were standing together, back to back, each one responsible for guarding against a different direction. Futian moved, and incredible, destructive sword will exploded, making space itself become distorted. A figure suddenly appeared in front of the Shun clan cultivator. It was Futian. His divine sword swept through the air, piercing downward. Thousands of rays of light shot out from the precious cauldron in front of the Shun clan cultivator, each one containing great cutting power. They sliced through the air, destroying everything before them without exception. But even so, Yi Futian's figure was still able to disappear. He reappeared above the cultivator and thrust his sword downward. The cultivator of the golden divine nation thrust out his golden spears straight up. This time, Yi Futian did not try to dodge. His divine sword descended, slamming into the golden spear. He was bathed in the light of the emperor as his attack power grew even stronger. But when colliding with a 7th-tier cultivator, he still felt his internal organs shake at the blow. He disappeared again, but at the same time, a beam of destructive power swept downwards. The sword will left a mark on his opponent's body. Yi Futian reappeared in the distance. The two others stared at him with ugly looks on their faces. The two 7th-tier cultivators could not lock him down, letting him hold the initiative. Moreover, whenever they tried, they could not cut through the space between them. They were not powerful enough. Perhaps if they were a little bit stronger, they could activate the spatial divine wheel. The will of the emperor within the wheel made this realm too stable. Yi Futian stared down at the two of them. Upper-level Renhuangs were upper-level Renhuangs after all. Even though he had the initiative, it would be difficult to kill them. They were ferociously powerful in terms of both attack and defense. Ordinary spells could affect them, but they could not do too much damage to them. Even powerful sword arts could not faze them. Even with his high level, his perfect divine wheel, the will of the emperor, and his divine weapon, he could still only hinder upper-level Renhuangs. If they were at the 8th tier, he would not be able to handle them. They would even be able to attack his divine wheel. Of course, what he was doing now was already far beyond the norm of what people thought possible. No one would dare imagine that a lower-level Renhuang could fight two upper-level Renhuangs. There was the whole vast realm of mid-level Renhuangs in between them. If his sword could not affect them, he would have to change his techniques. The sword will disappeared from the world suddenly, and the whole world became gloomy and oppressive. Up in the sky, the stars of the great path whirled around, making everything feel very heavy. Many stars fell, slamming into those two figures. Divine radiance still shone from the Shen clan cultivator's cauldron. It swept out towards the oncoming stars and cut through them. The cultivator of the golden divine nation raised his spear, and lines of golden light shot out of it, destroying even more of the falling stars. The cultivator of the golden divine nation grew in size, becoming as massive as a god. He reached out, and his hand covered the sky, blocking all the stars and smashing them to pieces, proving his strength. If Yi Futian waned to crush the two Renhuangs based on pure might, he would have difficulty doing so. He stood there up in the sky and reached out his hand. Suddenly, endless starlight fell. A long staff appeared in his hands, giving off brilliant divine light. The will of the emperor seeped into it. A dull booming sound rang out, resonating with the heavens and the earth. It was as if the power of the great path of space was all gathered together in that staff. He was possessed by a divine elephant. Ancient characters wrapped around him as his body turned into a divine furnace that grew larger and larger until it covered the entire world. Everything in that world became one. He had turned into an earth-shaking god of war. The might of a divine elephant filled him, giving him the feeling of endless power. Could his most powerful attack, launched in his own world, hurt the upper-level Renhuangs? The world of the Great Path resonated as it became one with him. When Yi Futian waved his staff, all the power of the world gathered into it. At that moment, the upper-level Renhuangs felt a dull pressure descend upon them. Yi Futian stepped forward, and divine elephants charged through the sky. His body transformed into a whirlwind, and he waved his staff in the air, whipping up windstorms that shot towards the two men below him. There was a loud boom, and the whole world trembled. All the power in the area had gathered together and fallen upon them. Before he even reached them, the ferocious power had formed into a wild, destructive hurricane that swept down. The two Renhuangs watched Yi Futian charging them and acted at the same time. The cauldron divine wheel's power swept out as the golden spear lashed out. They did not dare take this too lightly. Brilliant spatial arcs appeared in the sky and Yi Futian in a different area. But his staff's momentum had not been lessened at all. It flowed along like water. Bang, bang, bang. Successive violent collisions rang out, making the air tremble. The two Renowangs hurriedly changed the direction of their attacks to block. This ferocious assault had finally shaken them, sweeping them backward. Before they had even stopped, the great path roared. Endless stars fell around them, and they felt a powerful sense of threat. Yi Futian appeared behind them, cleaving at them with his staff yet again. Since their divine consciousnesses could not lock down Yi Futian, that meant they could not predict his movements. So, they once again suffered a powerful blow. The two of them felt very dejected. They were upper-level Renowangs, making them much higher level than their opponent, but they were on the defensive here. They had no way to control the great path in this private world. Therefore, they were restrained in all ways and had to take defensive measures. They had no way of predicting which way Yi Futian would attack from. Thus, they were subject to the violent assault of the storms. The staff cleaved downwards, and Yi Futian's technique was becoming more and more violent. When the fifth strike came, they were a little overwhelmed. At the sixth strike, they let out groans of pain. Staffs fell from the sky, transforming into stars. All the power of the world was in those staves. They fell down from up high. The two people below did not dare use all of their power to block them, for they had already been humiliated too often. But this time, Yi Futian's staff did not change directions. It swept straight down. Cracks appeared in the cauldron. The Shun clan cultivator let out a groan, and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. The divine Golden Nation cultivator was sent flying back as well. Both of them had been hit, but Yi Futian did not let up at all. He continued with his momentum. Staff after staff crashed into the cauldron, flowing as continuously as a stream of water. Smash! The cauldron shattered. The Shun clan cultivator spat up blood. His divine wheel was destroyed, which caused him a terrible injury. But in the next moment, many stars slammed into him, giving off a loud booming noise. His body was shattered as he was smashed to death. The Renhuang of the Golden Divine Nation trembled when he saw this. He began to wish to retreat. But Yi Futian's attacks not only did not lessen, they in fact, but also became stronger. He swept his gaze over his opponent. He gathered all his momentum into a single strike, pulling the power of the great path from the sky into it. The heavens and the earth resounded as he launched his most powerful attack. When the Golden Divine Nation cultivator's spears struck the staff, it was sent flying away, and the staff struck the Golden Divine Nation cultivator's body directly. The spatial sacred hall popped up and shielded Yi Futian's body. Yi Futian hid inside of the spatial sacred hall once more. But the frightening blow dashed upon the spatial sacred hall. Even that seemingly indestructible ritual implement cracked and was blasted away. More and more cracks became visible on the spatial sacred hall as if it could break into pieces any moment now. Yi Futian uttered a low rumbling sound as he tumbled and slammed on the inner walls of the ritual implement. He couldn't bear up against the attack from a master cultivator like Shun Gao. His life was hanging in the balance, even with the help of the ritual implement. Bang! The spatial sacred hall was shattered by the sharp blades that slashed through the void and blown to smithereens. Following that, the devastating attack shifted toward Yi Futian. It was powerful enough to annihilate him easily. Everyone watching from far away trembled with fear, eyes widened. Would Yi Futian bite the dust here after all? It would be a terrible pity if such a legendary genius were killed eventually. Every bystander felt a twinge of regret in their hearts. Bang! The wild and fierce attack didn't land on Yi Futian after all, despite the thundering noise. The crowd was staggered. They focused their eyes on the battlefield and saw another man appear by Yi Futian's side. With a domineering and solemn look, the man had jet black hair. He was also dressed in black. The dark demonic light flowed around his body and formed a demonic wall, which absorbed the crushing blow and didn't flinch at all. Yi Futian was also stunned. He turned to look at the man next to him and recognized that he was Mei Ting, the devil general from the devil world, who questioned Yi Futian previously in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Yi Futian hadn't met Mei Ting since last time. He assumed that this demonic cultivator might know his godfather and Yu Sheng's background. He never expected that Mei Ting would show up again here. However, before Yi Futian could think it through, Mei Ting already grasped his hand and took hold of his body using demonic methods. As the dark demonic light flashing, Mei Ting turned around and made a quick exit while bringing Yi Futian along with him by force. A blast of light streaked across the sky and left the sea of the path. People watching from the seaside saw the light above their heads but hadn't realized what happened just yet. A group of people emerged in midair above the coast shortly after Mei Ting and Yi Futian's disappearance. Surprisingly, they were cultivators from the Solar Divine Palace who withdrew from the battlefield before. It turned out that they never left for real. Instead, they had been waiting to see if they could reap the benefits in the end. Much to their surprise, Mei Ting took Yi Futian away. These cultivators from the Sun God Mountain knitted their eyebrows tightly. What did Mei Ting want? Why did he take Yi Futian with him? Could it be that he appreciated Yi Futian's talents and intended to bring him to cultivate in the devil world? Who did that energy belong to? One person said in a low voice. He sensed another type of energy besides Mei Ting's. It seemed that someone else might step in even if Mei Ting didn't intervene. Did that mean that some other top forces from the outer realms might be watching Yi Futian and the battle in secret? The situation became increasingly complicated and interesting at the same time. More and more people were getting involved in this chaos. The bolt of dark demonic light traveled a great distance in a short moment while the demonic will was surging in the sky. Yi Futian discovered that they left the sea of the path and the surrounding land and reached a much higher altitude. They were in the boundless outer space high above the higher heavens realm. Looking down, he could vaguely see a vast plate where the higher heavens realm was. What did Mei Ting want to do? Where did he want to take Yi Futian to? Mei Ting stopped abruptly when Yi Futian was puzzling over these questions. The demonic will was still swirling around Mei Ting's body while he stood in midair and surveyed the area ahead with his inky eyes. He remained still, silently, as his divine consciousness covered the infinite space. Yi Futian was perplexed by Mei Ting and said, "Thank you for saving my life. May I ask where you intend to take me to?" Mei Ting didn't respond to Yi Futian. He still stood there quietly. He seemed to be gazing into the void and spoke, "Why don't you reveal yourself since you're ready to take action already?" Apparently, just like the cultivators from the Sun God Mountain, Mei Ting also realized that someone else was going to do something if he didn't get involved. Nevertheless, Mei Ting forestalled his rival because he wanted to obtain some information. Besides, he was certain that the contenders would show their faces if he snatched Yi Futian first. Who were the people hiding in the dark? Could they be on his side? A surprised look flashed across Yi Futian's face. Someone else was here? He couldn't detect anything with his divine consciousness, nor could he sense any fluctuation in the surrounding energy. In addition, the invisible man must be so incredibly threatening that even a powerful cultivator like Mei Ting had to treat him seriously. So many people had their eyes on Yi Futian. At this point, a whirlpool emerged in front of Mei Ting and Yi Futian. A man wearing a mask walked out of the whirlpool. Wisps of energy wrapped around his mask and blocked Mei Ting's divine consciousness. A pair of deep and penetrating eyes stared at Mei Ting and Yi Futian from behind the mask. "I don't think you're the only one," Mei Ting said to the man. In an instant, two men came into sight from two different directions. They also wore the mysterious masks that concealed their faces. All three cultivators emanated a powerful and brooding air. No one spoke for a short moment, but everyone could feel the trepidation that hung thickly in the air. "Who are you?" Mei Ting stared at them and asked. Any one of these three people was a master cultivator at the same level as Mei Ting. This was not a lineup some random ordinary group could assemble. Only top forces from the outer realms could send these people. In addition, Mei Ting suspected that these people were not from the divine prefecture. Instead, they should be related to that person one way or another. That was why Mei Ting snatched Yi Futian. And he took Yi Futian to the outer space rather than staying in the higher heavens realm. They could avoid detection and surveillance more easily here. Mei Ting from the devil world. The leader of the three men spoke while looking at Mei Ting. He obviously knew who Mei Ting was. Mei Ting was not surprised. He continued to stare at them in silence. The energy swirled around his body was extremely domineering and intimidating. Despite being surrounded by 3 powerful cultivators, Mei Ting still maintained his authoritative bearing without showing a shred of fear. Mei Ting was one of the 8 devil generals in the devil world. Under the great emperor's command, he couldn't give the impression of weakness no matter who he was facing. "Someone told you not to intervene," the man continued to say. Mei Ting's eyes squinted slightly. The man's words seemed to have proved Mei Ting's conjecture. "Someone? Who is it?" Mei Ting asked, even though he already took a guess. "You knew who he is," the man answered straightforwardly. Mei Ting took in a deep breath. Did he just give a confirmation? He really existed. Moreover, he had been watching the situation closely. If that was the case, Yi Futian would be alright even if Mei Ting didn't step in just now. Someone would save Yi Futian. "Where is he?" Mei Ting asked. Yi Futian's heart was pounding rapidly as he heard their conversation. Could Mei Ting and the mysterious man be talking about his godfather? What was his godfather's true identity? Who are these people? What kind of relationship did Mei Ting have with his godfather? And ultimately, who was Yi Futian himself? Yi Futian felt like his godfather did everything to hide his identity. It would make sense if these 3 men worked for his godfather. After all, it was consistent with his style since they also wore masks to conceal their identities. No one even knew his godfather's existence. However, Mei Ting became distantly aware of something from Yusheng. Besides, the 9 realms was in chaos nowadays. The invasion of the cultivators from the top forces in the Divine Prefecture made the 9 realms a big melting pot. Did Yi Futian's godfather get involved as well? These 3 mysterious men, were they here to protect Yi Futian? "He said he will show up when it's time," the man said. Mei Ting frowned and made a menacing gesture. Nevertheless, the 3 men also unleashed formidable energy and made the air thick with dread. Yi Futian felt the worst at the center of the storm. He was in a lower plane and could barely endure the pressure. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.